Hello and welcome to the Beyond 6 Seconds podcast. I'm your host, Carolyn Keel, and today I'm thrilled to be talking with my guest, Jacob Ratliff. He's a client attraction coach and entrepreneur based in Asheville, North Carolina. Over the past 5 years, he's developed the Organic Client Attraction System, a comprehensive training and coaching program that helps entrepreneurs increase brand awareness and visibility, create meaningful engagement, and maintain long-term clients. As a proud member of the LGBTQ+ community, Jacob used his identity and lived experiences as the catalyst for creating his business, where he helps people grow their own businesses by leaning into their authentic, confident, empowered selves. Jacob, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you. Thank you so much for having me here today.
Yeah, so happy to have you here today. So you've always had an entrepreneurial spirit throughout your life. How did that show up in your early life?
Yeah, certainly. This is one of my favorite stories in that I'd love to tell it. So when I was young, I was probably 4 or 5 years old. My family was doing some work in the garden around the house, and they had bought mulch to mulch the flower beds, and I looked at it and I was like, this is just like pieces of wood. So I went to the garage, I got a big industrial trash bag and walked around the yard and picked up a bunch of sticks and leaves, and I tied the bag up and I swung it around over my head to get it all mixed up, because I really wasn't familiar with the kind of idea that if you do this, it doesn't actually get mixed up. And then my dad helped me make a sign on a piece of cardboard that said mulch for sale, price free. And so I was selling mulch for free. And I sat on my parents' front porch that whole afternoon, waving this sign at every car that drove by, trying to peddle my mulch. Now, it's probably my first kind of experience of, or way that entrepreneurship has shown up in my life. And it's been a constant theme ever since.
Wow. How old were you when you started from this story?
I think maybe five years old.
Oh my gosh. Oh wow.
Yeah, I was a small child.
Really small. Oh wow. Yeah, so it sounds like that was kind of the start, and you probably had other interests in being an entrepreneur, but after you went through all of your schooling, did you start out as an entrepreneur, or did you wind up working for someone else at first?
So by the time I graduated college, I was working full-time as a marketing director for a local health and wellness company based here in Asheville. And I did that for about maybe a year. And then I realized, okay, I need to do something else. On the side, I had, a friend who messaged me and said, hey, my husband has his own business. He really needs some help. Would you be willing to talk with him? And so that was my first freelance client. And kind of I slowly started to build that up on the side to the point that I was able to leave my full-time salaried position and then make that my full-time gig.
Wow. Was that an easy transition to make?
Not at all. There was a lot of doubt involved. There was a lot of, on one hand, I was seeing that, okay, I'm making more money from this freelance gig than I am in my full-time job. But there was the doubt of, can I sustain that? Am I gonna get 3, 6, 9 months down the road and think, oh my goodness, why did I throw such a good job away? Yeah. Because especially with the job market in Asheville, full-time salary jobs are pretty much unheard of here, because our local economy is really powered by tourism, so hospitality and travel. So there was a lot of doubt in the decision. But when I finally decided, when I finally put in my 2 weeks notice and really made this whole kind of crazy idea, it felt like, my career, that feeling was so amazing. And it was it was really clear from that moment, I'm never, never going back.
Mm. Oh, fantastic. It seems like, even though, it's kind of the right decision for you and it feels right, that there's still a lot of, ambiguity and anxiety and challenges around forming that out.
Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely.
Growing up, everyone knew that you, or had seen hopefully, that you have this entrepreneurial spirit. Was when you finally started to go freelance full time, was that something that the people around you were just supportive of, or were they surprised, or kind of what was it like in those early years starting out with your own business?
I don't think anyone was in the least bit surprised.
Mhm.
I think my parents were a little bit kind of worried for me because they've kind of both always, been in more secure kind of jobs like that. So this was
Yeah.
kind of crazy for them to think about. But one of the things that has been that's made me really, really lucky is that my grandfather is an entrepreneur and has, over the course of his career, built a large management consulting firm,
Mhm.
which meant that he was and continues to be an amazing mentor for me. Someone I can go to with every little question I have. And he really, throughout my childhood as well, I would say, so it was really instrumental in sowing those seeds of entrepreneurship in me. He was definitely always encouraging me to take on different little entrepreneurial projects that excited me.
That's great. Oh, it's good to have the model in the family. That is awesome.
Yeah.
And so you've been an entrepreneur now for about 5 years, you said, or
Yep.
so?
Mhm.
Yeah. And also mentioned that you really used your identity and your own lived experiences to kind of create your business. How did you sort of work and sort of leverage your own experiences and identity to build out your
Yeah.
business?
So about a year into my business, it was this point at which, things were going well. I was consistently getting leads and I was bringing in new clients. I started to notice that more and more often, the people that were booking calls with me or wanting to work with me were not people or businesses that I aligned with, either in terms of values or just their type of business.
Mhm.
And I had to pay really close attention to that because it made me think, okay, if this is what I'm attracting, then something kind of behind the scenes in the business is not aligned with me.
Mhm.
And the thing that was out of alignment is that as a young queer guy, I was really trying to put on this image of what I thought a successful entrepreneur should be,
Mm.
of a cis white straight guy. And I was in a lot of the circles that were kind of dominated by that demographic, and those circles weren't for me.
Mhm.
I was not in a place where I could actually show up as my full self in those circles. But if you looked at my personal life, it was a really queer personal life. But when you look at my business, it was almost like a different person was running the business. And I knew what I had to do, and it was something that I feel like I'd known it for a while, but I'd been avoiding it.
Mhm.
But it was to kind of come out in my business. And what I mean by that is not, let people in the business know that I'm gay, but be less afraid to lean into that with my business. Because
Mhm.
right, if it came up previously in the business, like yeah, I wouldn't, lie to someone or, you know, not or talk, pretend to be talking about a girlfriend when it was really a boyfriend.
Right.
But it was this choice to lean more into my queer identity as it related to the business. And I think the first thing I did was actually a pretty bold move now that I look back on it,
Mhm.
was I changed my little Facebook bio to explicitly call out saying that I help LGBT entrepreneurs,
Wow.
which is pretty pretty bold, and that it's not just, I'm gay, it's these are the people I help. And really got so specific. And honestly, there was no strategy behind that move other than that, like, this knowledge that I know that it's good to, have a really narrow niche. But it was just the thing that felt right to me. And that was really kind of like a night and day turning point in my business, wherein all of a sudden the people I was attracting were actually the people that I wanted to work with. Now, obviously, it wasn't just that bio, it was, an adjustment to the content that I was putting out and stuff like that. But that shift, dramatically shifted my business into kind of from something that I was kind of starting to resent into something that I was kind of falling back in love with.
I think it's fascinating that that really helped bring in the types of people that you wanted to work with more often, and that brought you more joy in the business.
Yeah, and it was this kind of moment, where I was really struggling with what to do, and ultimately I had to step back and say, okay, Jacob, if you were coaching a client in this exact position, what might you suggest to them? And I kind of had to coach myself through it, which, for coaches, we know that that's not always the easiest thing to do.
Yeah.
But that's kind of what it came down to. And I basically had to tell myself, yeah, you're limiting who you're working with, but you're not limiting it by sexual orientation, because that's kind of arbitrary. It's about who the messaging resonates with. So maybe only 50% of my clients are actually LGBT. The other 50% are people with whom my messaging still resonates, which is really an important distinction, which is that, when you niche down, it doesn't mean that you're excluding people. Actually, more often than not, you're opening the doors to more people.
Yeah. Yeah, that is an important distinction. Tell me a little bit more about the type of coaching that you do. Like, how do you help entrepreneurs kind of, grow their business and coach them through, while at the same time being more authentic in their business?
What I do is really a blend of coaching and consulting, which is an important distinction that I won't dive into at this moment. But a lot of times what happens when I'm in my initial conversations with the client is that first thing we find out is that they're not really excited about their offer or about what they're selling. And usually it's less about, their confidence to help someone achieve results. And it's more about their confidence in the way that they're talking about it. Because usually it's either one of two things. Either they just don't know how to talk about it, or, and this is the more common one, they've been taught to talk about what they sell and what they have to offer in a way that just doesn't resonate with them at all. And the result of that is that when they're talking with prospective clients about their offer, it's not resonating with the prospects because it's not resonating with them. And that's huge. And it seeps into not just those conversations, but into the content, into the social media presence, everywhere else.
Yeah.
And so when I'm working with clients, the first thing we always do 10 times out of 10 is we really take a look at either building a new offer or fine-tuning their existing one to help them figure out the best way to talk about it that resonates with not just their ideal client, but them, because it needs to light a fire inside of them. And then the second piece that we look at offer, messaging, ideal client. We kind of treat those in a similar vein. And then what we do next is we start looking at the social media side of things. And again, this is one of those things where people fall into one of two camps. Either they don't know how to promote themselves on social media, or they've been taught to promote themselves on social media in a way that doesn't align with them. maybe you're noticing the trend here.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
And so we look at taking kind of this proven social media client attraction strategy and making it work for the client, not just kind of giving them here's this thing to do, go do it. Because the reality is, you hear so many people talking about, here's this, quick and easy, little to no effort way to get new clients. Here's this plug and play formula. You just check the boxes and you magically have clients. No, unfortunately doesn't work like that. Yeah. And so there's often this, when we talk about authenticity in our business, we often talk about kind of that aligning with the strategy of how you're marketing. Mm-hmm. But the connection that doesn't get made is from the values and the authenticity to the actual tactics. Oh. And that's super important, because the strategy, that's the high level overview. Most people can look at any strategy, any marketing strategy, and say, okay, I can see that. I can see how that would work. But then for every strategy, there's a million different combinations of tactics, the actual nitty-gritty things that you do. There's a million different ways to combine those, to tweak them. And that's the piece that often gets left out of this conversation. Mm-hmm. And what we do is we bring that piece kind of to the forefront. We understand the strategy, but we have to connect the values and the importance of authenticity to what you're sitting down and doing on a daily basis. Because that's part of my experience when I was first getting started, is I knew that if I did X, Y, and Z things, it would help me grow my business. Mm-hmm. But X, Y, and Z things, those tactics, didn't align with me. Oh. So I mostly didn't do them in the first place, mm-hmm. even though I knew that they would work, but they weren't out of alignment. And when I did them, my whole heart wasn't in it. So I didn't get results. And that's kind of a perfect illustration of why it's so important that, the things that you sit down and do every day, those tactics, those daily revenue generating activities, mm-hmm. they themselves have to be aligned, in addition to the offer, in addition to the messaging, in addition to kind of everything else. Mm-hmm. And so what we would do is really bring that piece into the whole process.
Oh, yeah, that's interesting. As you said, anyone can follow a marketing strategy, but you're the unique person. So the things that you can add to it are what make it different and make it stand out in the marketplace.
Yeah, and ultimately, authenticity means alignment within every part of your person and your business. Mm. So it means, being kind of maybe more vulnerable than might necessarily be comfortable, sharing your story, but it also means being in alignment all the way down to the most minute details of your business. It's not only this outward facing thing. Wow. When in reality, showing up authentically is mostly 90% inward.
Really? Wow. So is that like being aligned with the type of work that you're doing, or the people that you're supporting, or having a comfort level in the different tactics? I'm just intrigued by the thought that 90% of that authenticity work is internal.
If 90% were outward facing, we would probably call that a performance.
Yeah.
And yeah, what we mean by inward facing is this really, really deep alignment between who you are, mm-hmm. what you do, and how you do it. And obviously each of those three things goes way further down than just that. But that's kind of the general idea, is that when you have that, one-to-one alignment, that's when that 10% mm-hmm. that's outward facing, yeah, it's easy. It's just showing up.
Yeah.
Because in doing that inward facing work, you've done the work to be able to show up.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. No, that makes sense. from an entrepreneurial standpoint, have you been able to kind of build like a support community around you of not necessarily clients, but other entrepreneurs or just other people that you can sort of share business ideas or challenges with? Because it seems like
Yeah.
a lot of times entrepreneurship can be, kind of lonely, especially at the beginning stages. So I'm just wondering if there's a community aspect to this as well.
Yeah. And like I said, prior to this, leaning into my authentic self in my business, I was in a bunch of different circles that weren't for me, that I didn't feel comfortable in. And I stepped out of those circles, but initially I didn't step into any other ones. And, looking back, that was a mistake because I'd gone from having, a circle of people that I didn't really like, to be honest,
Mhm.
but to no circle at all. When I kind of realized that was the catalyst that kind of led me to start my Facebook group, LGBT friendly coaches and leaders. And that community has been a really amazing resource, not only for myself, but for a lot of other coaches, consultants, and entrepreneurs out there. Just having this kind of space, because not a lot of business spaces are for LGBT folk.
Mhm. Yeah. I think that is powerful. Yeah. That's an interesting thought. Is obviously we don't want to be in places where we're not, where we don't want to be, in circles that we don't really click with. But yeah, at the same time, it's one thing to not to leave those circles, but another thing to either find or create those communities that we need for our own support, whether it's to grow our business or grow our careers in other ways. That is very important. Absolutely.
And that community has been huge, for me personally and for a lot of other people as well. Just to connect with people who are doing similar things and who can learn from each other.
Yeah. Well, that's awesome. Wow. And, as we were talking a little earlier, you mentioned when you first started out with your business, which I imagine is also around the time that you were kind of trying to find, which circles to be in. And maybe you were in those circles initially where you didn't feel comfortable. You also mentioned that there was, some self-doubt, anxiety, other challenges, as to be expected with a new business and a totally new venture. Did you feel that finding, building that community, having that community support, as well as aligning more authentically with your business, did that help with some of the anxiety or self-doubt, or is that just sort of a constant thing that entrepreneurs, that you as an entrepreneur just manage through?
The community helped a lot. I think the biggest thing for me, though, with kind of a lot of that self-doubt was kind of identifying what was the real issue that was causing that self-doubt. For me, it was money. It was coming from this place of scarcity, making 10K in a month, but still thinking, oh my goodness, but what about next month?
Yeah.
When it's only like the third of this month. Finding community was really important for me for that, because, being able to connect with people who were dealing with similar things, being connected to resources that could help me work on that, money trauma,
Mhm.
if use that phrase.
Yeah. And I think that is a trap that a lot of people fall into, is that scarcity mindset, whether they're entrepreneurs or not. How are you able to change your thinking around that so that it wasn't a constant worry after a while?
Yeah. So what I did was I spent some time really thinking intentionally about what are the things within my control
Mhm.
that when I do them, I experience abundance. So not just, shifting thought patterns, but what are the actions
Yeah.
that make me feel that abundance? And the thing that kept coming up time and time again was when I'm on a coaching call with a client.
Mhm.
That is the thing that always makes me experience abundance. At this point, I was kind of struggling with some lead flow stuff.
Mhm.
So I started giving out some free coaching sessions
Oh.
to help other people, and not strategy sessions, not sales calls, but just, here's a free 45-minute coaching session, no pitch at the end, you know and it was to help other people, and it was to help me experience that abundance. And fortunately, some of those free coaching calls turned into clients, which is kind of beside the point, because the point really is that after getting off one of those free coaching calls where I didn't make a dime,
Mhm.
I felt that abundance, and I suddenly wasn't thinking in terms of scarcity anymore.
So yeah, really finding those activities that bring you energy and that abundance, as you said. Absolutely. Because some people, I guess, with scarcity just sort of throw themselves into the work and work harder and just sort of go in the opposite direction where they're looking for more things that pay and different ways to bring in streams of income. But I think it's
And
really interesting. And I guess speaks to your, approach to bringing abundance and attracting that energy into your business is find what you enjoy doing and do more of that to kind of inspire
yeah,
yourself.
and whatever you put out is what you get, is what you get in return. So you know I was at the point I was already throwing myself into the work. And I couldn't throw myself any further into the work, which was kind of that bottom point for me, right?
Mhm.
And what I started to see was that kind of almost desperate energy that I was putting out is what I was being met with in return. And so it's not just thinking, or for me at least, it was not just a matter of shifting thinking, it was a matter of shifting action as well.
Yeah. Oh, very interesting. You've been working and coaching for 5 years or so now. It worked with probably a variety of different clients. Are there any sort of experiences or coaching experiences with other entrepreneurs that kind of stick in your mind in terms of people who have, really had a big shift in their business, or, you've really helped them either establish a business or make a big change in their business as a result of your coaching? I'm just kind of curious about some of
Yeah,
the ways you've been
yeah,
able to really
certainly.
help people.
A couple of my favorite clients. So they're a they're a lesbian couple who are relationship coaches. Prior to us working together, they had been working with this other coach for about a year, and they weren't really even working with the coach. It was one of those big ticket coaching programs where there's not actually a whole lot of coaching or personal attention involved. But they were frustrated because the tactics that they were implementing, that they were being told to implement, that they were implementing kind of according to how they were saying to implement them.
Mhm.
A, they weren't working. B, they hated the tactics. They said, if I have to run another Facebook ad or do another webinar that doesn't result in a single strategy call,
Mhm.
I'm going to throw in the towel.
Yeah.
And I couldn't blame them. And one of the first things we did was identify, okay, what aspect of your business currently do you really, really love? And does it really gives you life? And they both said, it might sound silly, but our teeny tiny Facebook group with 200 people in it.
Mhm.
So I said, awesome, let's roll with that. I think by the end of 12 weeks working together, their Facebook group was at about 1,000 members.
Wow.
And they were having the best time going live in their Facebook group, connecting with their Facebook group members and booking calls with them, with the people that they thought they could help with a coaching relationship.
Mhm.
And if you look at them now, they're not just doing great with their business, they're having fun. They're not showing up on a Sunday afternoon to do this webinar that they really don't want to do.
Mm-hmm. Wow, that's great. And in a way, it's permission to focus on those tactics that bring you energy, but also says you don't have to be everywhere and you don't have to be doing everything in order to generate
Yeah,
sales. So even, it sounds like they focused on this one thing that really brought them joy and energy, and that was enough to grow their business exponentially.
yeah, exactly. Instead of, doing a million things 50% of the way,
Mm-hmm.
doing the one thing 100% of the way. And if you're doing the one thing, it might as well be something you like.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. That is so cool. Wow. So looking forward, what goals do you have for your coaching and consulting business?
Yeah. So say 5 years down the road, still going to be doing one-to-one and group coaching, because that's really where my heart is. My goal isn't to build a massive coaching empire and to have 1,000 clients at any given time,
Mm-hmm.
but at any given time have that kind of core group of clients that I work with and that I have really good relationships with. One of the highlights of my week is my Monday afternoon group call with my clients.
Mm-hmm.
And for many of them, it's the highlight of theirs too, they've told me. And that really intense, personal, high touch approach is something I'm always going to be doing. Now, I would say probably 2 or 3 years from now, I will have outsourced kind of more of the administrative stuff and the operational stuff, which I, already have done to some extent, but, I'm going to continue to do, because what I've found in my business is that the more time I spend doing what I love, which is working with clients, the happier and more fulfilled everyone is.
Yeah.
Me, my clients, my partner, because I'm in a better mood, everyone.
Yeah. And it makes sense. You can, outsource and delegate the tasks, automate the tasks that you can, so that you can focus on what you really enjoy doing and where your passions and your talents lie.
Yeah. One of my favorite things now is when someone says, "Oh, I loved your post on Instagram yesterday."
Mm-hmm.
And I say, I don't even know what I posted on Wednesday, because I didn't post it.
Yeah. And the clients that you work with, are they all across the country or in a specific geographic area?
So mostly are based somewhere in the United States. I have a couple in the UK and the rest of Europe. But fortunately, running an online business before COVID hit meant I was a little bit ahead of the game there.
Yeah. Wonderful. So how can people get in touch with you if they want to learn more about your coaching and consulting work?
Yeah, absolutely. You can find me at jacobratliff.com, or you can just look me up and add me on Facebook. My name is Jacob Ratliff. Add me as a friend and we can chat if you'd like.
Awesome. Yeah, I'll put links to your website and your Facebook links in there, and so people can click on it easily from the show notes. Very good. So yeah, Jacob, thank you so much for being on my show today. And
Thank you for having me.
Yeah, as we close out, is there anything else that you'd like our listeners to know, or anything that they can help or support you with?
I think the kind of biggest thing that I want to end on is, if you're not feeling aligned in your business, if you're feeling like you're doing the things but nothing's happening, find that one thing, the one tiniest thing. It could be as small as taking the dog for a walk. It could be totally unrelated to your business, and do that and see how that leaves you feeling afterwards. And more importantly, see if doing that one thing gives you any clarity on what it is to do next. Because that's one of the beautiful things about being an entrepreneur is we have this amazing opportunity to trust and listen to ourselves. And the more we lean into that, the more it just works.
Fantastic. Great words to end on. Thanks again, Jacob, for being on my show.
Thank you so much.